Hello and welcome back to my Bookish channel. Today I'm going to read something of my own. It's a piece that I wrote a number of years ago and I put on my blog, and I've just checked. It got 250,000 views on my blog, which was quite unusual. Neil Gaiman also shared it, and I think he got even more. Anyway, it went around the world, this particular story about David Bowie and invisible masks. I've published it as a short book that's available from Obverse Books in Edinburgh, Obverse Books. In story form, it's called Stardust and Snow, and it's a kind of expanded version of that story. I'll put the link below. But I'm going to read my original version, which is called Fancy Believing in the Goblin King. My friend told me a story he hadn't told anyone for years. When he used to tell it years ago, people would laugh and say, "Who'd believe that? How can that be true? That's daft." So he didn't tell it again for ages. But for some reason, last night, he knew it would be just the kind of story I would love. When he was a kid, he said, they didn't use the word autism. They just said shy, or isn't very good at being around strangers or lots of people. But that's what he was and is, and he doesn't mind telling anyone. It's just a matter of fact with him, and sometimes it makes him sound a little and act differently, but that's okay. Anyway, when he was a kid, it was the middle of the 1980s, and they were still saying shy or withdrawn rather than autistic. He went to London with his mother to see a special screening of a new film he really loved. He must have won a competition of something, I think. Some of the details he can't quite remember. But he thinks it must have been London they went to. And the film is one of my all-time favourites too. It's a dark, mysterious fantasy movie. Every single frame is crammed with puppets and goblins. There are silly songs and a goblin king who wears clingy silver tights and who kidnaps a baby. And this is what kickstarts the whole adventure. It was Labyrinth, of course, and the star was David Bowie. And he was there to meet the children who had come to see this special screening. I met David Bowie once, was the thing my friend said that caught my attention. You did? When was this? I was amazed and surprised too at the casual way he brought this revelation out. Almost anyone I know would have told the tale 1,000,000 times already. He seemed surprised I would want to know, and he told me the whole thing, all out of order, and I eked the details out of him. He told the story as if he'd been on an adventure of some kind back then, and he wasn't quite allowed to tell the whole tale, like there was a pact or a magic spell surrounding it, as if something profound and peculiar would occur if he broke the confidence. It was 30 years ago, and all us kids who loved Labyrinth then and who still love it now are all middle-aged. Saddest of all, the Goblin King is dead. Does the magic still exist? I asked him what had happened on his adventure. I was withdrawn, he said, more withdrawn than the other kids. We all got a signed poster, but because I was shy, they put me in a separate room to one side. And so I got to meet him alone. He'd heard I was shy, and it was his idea. He spent 30 minutes with me. He gave me this mask. Look, this one. He said, "This is an invisible mask, you see?" He took it off his own face and looked around like he was scared and uncomfortable all of a sudden. He passed me his invisible mask. "Put it on," he told me. "It's magic." And so I did. Then he told me, "I always feel afraid, just the same as you, but I wear this mask every single day. And it doesn't take the fear away, but it makes me feel a bit better. I feel brave enough then to face the whole world and all the people. And now you will too." I sat there in his magic mask, looking through the eyes at David Bowie, and it was true. I did feel better. Then I watched as he made another magic mask. He spun it out of thin air, out of nothing at all. He finished it and smiled, and then he put it on. And he looked so relieved and pleased. He smiled at me. Now we've both got invisible masks. We can see through them perfectly well, and no one would know we're even wearing them, he said. So I felt incredibly comfortable. It was the first time I felt safe in my whole life. It was magic. He was a wizard. He was a goblin king grinning at me. I still keep that mask, of course. This is it. Now. Look. I kept asking my friend questions, amazed by his story. I loved it and wanted all the details. How many other kids? Did they have puppets from the film there as well? What was David Bowie wearing? I imagined him in his lilac suit from Live Aid, or maybe he was dressed as the Goblin King in lacy ruffles and cobwebs and glitter. What was the last thing he said to you when you had to say goodbye? David Bowie said, "I'm always afraid as well, but this is how you can feel brave in the world." And then it was over. I've never forgotten it. And years later, I cried when I heard he had passed. My friend was surprised that I was delighted by his tale. The normal reaction is, that's just a stupid story. People say, fancy believing in an invisible mask. But I do. I really do believe in it. And for me, it's still the best story I've heard all year. Okay, I'll stop there and talk soon. Press like below and subscribe. Bye-bye.